ill-posed a problem. It's also possible. And also because of the various issues involved in inverse modeling, only approximate aquifer parameters can be estimated. So one should also understand, I should mention here, simplest one will be when you take a confined aquifer system, all of us are taught you are going to have two parameters in terms of the transmissivity T and the storage coefficient S. And of course, do the pump test, you can do it and do the fix the, obviously using the type curves, you can estimate it. And the same thing very elegantly, you can do it using the mathematical inverse modeling. But then the same problem becomes much challenging and bigger as the number of zones increases, the number of layers increases, the whole thing will be in terms of the parameters, the problem becomes much bigger. So one of the classifications which are given is the direct approach or the equation error criteria. And also we have the indirect approach or the output error criteria. In fact, I suggest that one should be seeing this paper A of 1986, which is a classical paper in WRR. All of you will get a feel for how groundwater problem, inverse problems are posed here. In the equation error criterion, the unknown model parameters are estimated by using the boundary condition, the state variable data, and the variation in state variables are known over the domain. Thus, the governing equation becomes in terms of the unknown nodal model parameters. In such a cases, number of equations is equal to number of state variables in this type of problem. But then in the output error criterion, the difference between the observed and the simulated state variables at the specified observation point is minimized. And this minimization objective function leads to optimization algorithms. So the optimization algorithm starts with the initial set of model parameters or a guess values, we can say. It improves it iteratively until the objective function is reduced and to an acceptable limit. You are going to do it till iteration converges. The inverse codes can be coupled with numerical models to estimate the model parameters. I should also mention here that inverse code doesn't mean always a numerical model. If you were to have an analytical solution for a problem, which the analytical solutions are available, one can use the analytical solutions. And many times analytical solutions for some of the problems will be very complex to even to integrate it with an integral function. One should use very special tools to integrate those things, and you can still link it up with the inverse model. So parameter dimension and parameterization. So when you try to look at the model parameters, examples of active parameters, as we mentioned just now, is such as transmissivity, which is a continuous function of space variables. And it's also possible this continuous function is approximated in a finite dimensional form. Like any numerical things you are going to do, here also you are going to have a discretization. And the reduction in the parameter dimension is done by parameterization. So you are going to assume the parameterization at different zones are going to represent that area or whatever you are talking about, the zonation. And ultimately the parameterization can also be done either by, as I mentioned, either zonation or interpolation method. If you were to get at different places, you can do interpolation and spread the parameters across the domain of interest. So in the zonation method, the region is divided into a number of subregions or zones, and a constant parameter value is used to characterize each of the zone. The dimension of parameterization is represented by the number of zones. For example, if you were to have 10 zones, you are going to have 10 T and 10 S values, taking the example of a confined aquifer system. And of course, so each one of them, 2 of them, and 10 of 10 zones, you are going to talk about 20 parameters you are talking about. In the interpolation method, the region is divided into a number of nodes. You are going to have many nodes across. The unknown model parameter function is approximated by a linear combination of the basis functions. You are going to have a function, basis function, independent set, where the parameter dimension corresponds to the number of unknown nodal parameter values. So how many are there? As many parameters you are going to think about it. So going to the actual inverse solution, you need an objective function which is to determine the model parameters T of xy from a limited number of observations, a piezometric head, say h of xy t. The classical least square error can be used to represent the objective function, which is minimization of j, hd minus hd star transpose and hd minus hd star, where hd is the vector calculated heads and observation values, and based on the some estimated values of the parameters, hd star is a vector of the observation head. So you are going to have simulated and the measured value. You are going to minimize this quadratic function and then try to find the values of transmissivity. The T is parameterized either by the zonation or interpolation method. And also it's possible that Gauss-Newton algorithm can be used as an effective tool to perform the minimization from literature. The popularity of the algorithm stems from the fact that it does not require calculation of Hessian matrix and the rate of convergence is superior. And you can also have in any of these parameterization, you need to have constraints, an upper and lower bound parameter bounds, and easily incorporate it into the algorithm. And the algorithm starts with a set of initial estimates of the parameters, converges to a local optimum. If the objective function is convex, the local optimum could be global optimum. But due to the presence of noise, the observation data, the inverse problem is usually non-convex. In fact, even finding out whether it is convex or non-convex itself is a challenging problem. If the behavior is a convex function, your behavior will be much better. So you also have what's called unconstrained optimization problem. In fact, the equation is given here in terms of and whenever you try to find out the parameters, you need to update the transmissivity. For example, k+1 as transmissivity at the kth iteration, and also in terms of rho k dk, where dk's are the Gauss-Newton direction correction vector, which you have used it. And of course, all these things are you have to use the Newton-Raphson method to minimize the objective function, which was shown earlier. Step size is a scalar, can be determined by the interpolation of trial function. The direction JD transpose JT may become ill condition. And also one can use the Gauss-Levenberg-Marquardt algorithm, which combines the Gauss-Newton algorithm and the gradient projection technique, which can be used. And it's also possible the elements of the Jacobian matrix are represented by the sensitivity coefficients. We should also understand that the rate of change of each of these piezometric, in this case, what we are talking about, the piezometric heads at different places, and the change with respect to parameters T1, T2, TL, the sensitivity, which is represented by the Jacobian matrix, becomes very, very important for you to understand how the whole problem is behaving. One can do the computation of sensitivity coefficients also, the DHI by DT. And of course, there are different calculation of sensitivity coefficients using different methods like influence coefficient method, sensitivity equation method, variational method. So one has to keep track of the sensitivity coefficients so that you understand how your system or the problem is behaving. So I should also mention here, you can also keep track of in terms of the Hessian matrix, so that the second order thing also will be there. You will know how the system is performing, both with respect to the objective function behavior as well as sensitivity when you talk about the Jacobian in terms of the parameter variations. So keeping just these things as a background, let us look at some of the examples. Sandeep, all of you are able to hear. I hope I can, it's fine, Sandeep.
Yeah. Oh. Yes, sir, it's visible, sir.
Okay. I'll just move on. So yeah, the problem will be like, unfortunately, we cannot have one-on-one and any discussion. I'll go through it, and at the end, I'll take give a lot of time for discussion. We'll rapidly go through some of these things. And let us look at some application on groundwater. I'm going to talk about some specialized type of groundwater system on a coastal aquifer. I'm not going to talk about a very simple, start with simple like confined aquifer system, but we are talking about a coastal aquifer here. This is a Mukha aquifer near Surathkal, and we are having obviously some sort of a geophysical study has been done in this area. So we are trying to look at how to estimate the aquifer parameters in a coastal aquifer, because you are going to have pumping, you are going to have rainfall, you're going to have recharge, you're going to have onslaught of seawater which is coming into the aquifer system, and of course rivers which are flowing in the area, and some data of the observation wells are also given here along with the resistivity things. We are going to look at how such a problem can be posed. So we are actually trying to address the issue in terms of the flow and transport equation. The first one equation is the flow equation, groundwater flow equation. Second one equation is the effective dispersion equation. And these are all the standard terminology for any of the groundwater people. I'm not going to read all of them. So what we are trying to understand here is, when you are trying to talk about a contaminant transport problem, you are going to have a flow problem first. You are going to have a contaminant transport, and depending on the type of the things, the parameters for a flow problem, it could be the storativity, it could be the transmissivity, which you need to estimate, or the hydraulic conductivity. For a transport problem, it could be the dispersivity, what you need to find out, and also you need to estimate the type of advection processes or the things which are going on in the equation. So keeping these things in mind, let us look at, in fact, we have used the FE flow here, groundwater flow solute transport, the software, so which actually is built around a Galerkin finite element method. And of course, it uses the Picard iteration technique. And of course, it uses conjugate gradient method for the whole solution. So the discretization is done using the triangulation code, and time is supposed to be the second order accurate expression Adams dashboard predictor corrector method. So what we are trying to estimate here is we are actually building a 3D model for development. The aquifer type is supposed to be phreatic aquifer, stratification 5 layer, 6 borehole data, discretization 6 nodal prism, top level elimination SRTM data is given, bottom topography is given, data 40 meters below sea level is given. Using all these things, as you can see on the left hand side, the whole aquifer has been created. We are only trying to use the conceptual model we have put it, and we are going to check whether what we have done with the available data when we try to run, what type of results we are going to get. So the initial and boundary conditions are also need to be given, as you fully understand. So initial hydraulic head for the domain is assigned for the starting month at discrete observation wells, and of course using kriging to spread it across. The initial solute concentrations, mass concentration is also assigned in a steady state simulation and also integrated with observation data points. The top boundary condition is defined as a specified flux, which is phreatic. Bottom boundary, there is no flow boundary condition, which is given here. And of course, as you can see on the right hand side, the type of Dirichlet and Cauchy conditions which are needed for any solution problem is given, keeping in mind that the host, obviously, you are going to have a very high concentration, salt concentration. And on the other side, you are going to have the groundwater condition, which is given here. And of course, a Cauchy boundary condition is given for interaction between river and the groundwater system. And having done this, we try to assume that the initial parameters are all assumed from the literature and elsewhere. Also, the sum of the pump tests done by the group, very active group in NITK, Surathkal, Maheshran group. We are trying to use them. As you can see here, KXH, KYY, KZZ, all the layers are also identified using the pump test. These things we used it and try to simulate the whole, build the whole aquifer, and then we try to simulate it. We also assume the homogeneity and the isotropy, heterogeneity, anisotropy, all that, as you can see here from the definition of Friese and Cherry. We try to use that, and ultimately the initial parameters are given based on, as I mentioned, some of them are all given by the activity, which is research activity going on in the NITK Surathkal, and also some of them from the Friese and Cherry or the standard literature, and lateral dispersivity is also given. So given these things, when we try to find out what will happen to the model parameters, you can see the other model parameters are also given, as you can see here in on the right hand side in this table: seasonal pumping rates, recharge rates, freshwater density, seawater density, most important, the dispersivity molecule, all that these are also given here. So basic conceptual model evaluation is done using RMSE. When we try to do that, when we ran this, assuming these are the parameters correct, the conceptual model is correct, as you can see, there is a lot of difference between observed and simulated values. So as you can see here, it is obvious that the type of conceptual model which is assumed may or may not be correct. As you can see, the variation is very large between the simulated and observed values. And of course, the temporal differences also will be there in terms of the values. So these spatial changes from 3.55 meters to 5.55 meters are also given depending on the monsoon and non-monsoon period. So temporal performance measure for the concentration is also given here, where you can see the lot of changes are there. So from the model evaluation and the literature, it can be concluded that the anisotropic spatially varying hydraulic conductivity, dispersivity, from all these things, these two parameters were identified, which becomes very, very important. Anisotropic spatially varying hydraulic conductivity and dispersivity. These could be the ones which, if you try to actually model them and find out better values, our model is going to be much better. So for which we use the PEST, some of you may be fully aware. So parameter estimation techniques is there, PEST, and it is linked with the FE flow. And of course, Gauss-Levin Marquardt algorithm, GILMA, we have used it. So in the objective function, you are seeing the square of the head error and square of the concentration error, which is going to be minimized over the range what we are going to talk about. Of course, we also need some sort of convergence for both the in terms of the 5 values. So a total of 1134 data points are used for the inverse modeling, 34 temporal observed values for H and 34 temporal values for TDS. The total dissolved solids are, for each observation were used. And ultimately, we'll be estimating about 225 parameters. So 75 KXX, 75 KYY, and of course, we are linking up KZZ to KXX in terms of 75 alpha L or alpha P to alpha L, like that we have done. So these actual parameters are estimated at static pilot points, computational points. Pilot points are randomly spaced with an equal number of points in each layer. So estimated heterogeneity KXX and KY are shown here. Computational time taken is 16-20 hours in a type of things. And of course, it's computationally quite heavy. And also we had the termination criteria, as you can see here, in terms of 5, in terms of the normalized 5, in terms of less than 1. So we also estimated the longitudinal dispersivity values, which can vary from 6.265 to 11.901. And at the wells 1, 2, 6, 8, and 7, alpha L was less than 7.5 meters. At wells, other wells, it was anywhere between 7.5 and 9 meters. So using the calibrated inverse model, our R square value went on improving. As you can see in the figure, even our the comparison between the observed and simulated values also are becoming much better. So that's why we inverted and then we tried to find out the parameters, and those parameters we used to calibrate the model and the refix it, and our comparison is much better. And as you can see here also, it is continued for another type of things, the whole variation in terms of different, as you can see from February 05 up to February 08, we are trying to compare that, and we are trying to look at it's also not that all the time it will be fair, we are going to get a good comparison. At certain places we are going to get, at certain places, as you can see here, well 11 and 7, well number 7 and well number 11 are the type of RMSE values are also given here, which are a little higher. RMSE values is decreasing in February, March, April, indicating additional data on cellular transportation is also required. It also indicates that with the available data, when you try to do, whether it is proper or not is the one which you can look at it. So when we try to ultimately compare the basic conceptual model, you can see the R square values are all given here. As you can see, the H is decreased by 50% when we use this better estimate, and C reduced by 5.7% to 8.87% in well number 7 and 11 respectively. So when we try to conclude from here, the summary of the case study, the low performance of the developed conceptual model signifies the importance of considering spatially varying aquifer flow and solute transport parameters in all the layers. The inverse model used to estimate anisotropic spatially varying hydraulic conductivities and heterogeneous longitudinal dispersivity is computationally very demanding, but this effort is worthwhile to obtain the spatial varying aquifer parameters. The inverse calibrated model results show substantial improvement. Errors in the hydraulic head is reduced by more than 50% when compared with the developed conceptual model. The error in the solute concentration is also reduced by more than 10%. So I think this only what I would like to say is just a demonstration how you can use the inverse modeling technique to, in fact, improve your conceptual model. Also find out the proper parameters which govern the system, and ultimately come out with a much better model which can govern that system. In fact, here we are just talked about in a coastal aquifer how things are all behaving and what type of layering you have to take, how the hydraulic conductivity has to be calculated, how the anisotropy has to be taken care of, how heterogeneity has to be addressed. More important, how the dispersivity values also can be calculated, so that the overall model what you build will be much better than what we have earlier. That's what we have just shown it in this example. Now moving on to application to water distribution system here. So in a water distribution system, basically all of us are taught you have a hydraulic model and water quality model. In the hydraulic model, you are looking at the pressures and velocities and things like that which are moving. In the water quality model, basic thing is just a simple constant when you try to take, for example, a chlorine constant, you would like to understand how the chlorine varies all along the pipeline as the flow is taking place. So the governing mass conservation equations, energy conservation equations we need to satisfy. Obviously flows in pipes, heads at loads, resistance R in the pipelines, all need to come into picture when you want to model such a system. And straight away jumping to water quality simulation, that's what I think our interest is more on the water quality here. So when you try to look at the water quality deterioration, it can happen due to blending, It can happen due to age, type, maintenance of the distribution system. It's also possible that a lot of chemical and biological transformations can happen. And ultimately, the water quality is expressed in terms of the constant concentration, conservative, or it could be reactive, water age, and source trace. So it's also possible when you try to look at the chlorine reaction kinetics, the bulk flow reactions, it could be due to organic content in water. It could also be the first order reaction or non-first order kinetics, it could be. And in the wall reactions, you can have, it can happen due to the materials at the pipe wall and the corrosion products. It could also be the first order or zero order kinetics, it's possible. So for a moment, just assuming that, we are not addressing the issue of diffusion or dispersion, though some people are talking about it nowadays, but when we try to look at only the advective part, the concentration equations, what you are seeing there is dC by dt is equal to minus Vi dC by dx plus or minus R of Ci. So R of Ci is the reaction rate expression. It's a purely a advection process here. Then you also have a dilution at the joining of the junction of the nodes. And also you have a mass balance equation at a storage tank, because you are bringing in old water is there, new water you are bringing in, some water is going out. By the volume Vs and Cs, it is going to get mixed up. That's what we are trying to address the issue in the last equation here. Most of us are aware that whenever we talk about water quality model, the simplest of the things will be using the EPONET. EPONET, in fact, gives you the hydraulic model, both in terms of flows and pressures. And it also actually calculates some very simple water quality simulation models it does. And model movements can be of non-reactive, and it can also be of reactive chemical species. And one can track the percent of flow from a source node to the other nodes. We should also understand that any flow can be from different sources, and you can what we call source trace. You keeping that in mind at a given node, you can track it. Are you going to get from source 1 or source 2? That also can be tracked, because those are going to give different chemical signatures. And the system operation can be based on both simple tank level and the timer controls or something like that. So whenever we try to talk about water quality parameter estimation, we are talking about the water quality, as I mentioned, bulk reaction parameter, wall reaction parameter, and most important what we are talking about here, this is of our interest, inverse modeling techniques, which are used to estimate the unknown wall reaction parameters, and of course one has to use the water quality model. And the unknown reaction parameters can be expressed as, it could be overall first order, the first order wall reaction parameter, zero order wall reaction parameter. There is a lot of combinations. One can use many of them and study how it can behave. So it comes back to the inverse problem, where the water quality parameter estimation, we are considering a steady state problem in terms of the flow. So you're going to have the model formulation. Obviously, you need to have an objective function you want to minimize. So Cn naught j minus Cn Cj square of the deviation. So observed chlorine concentration and the computed chlorine concentration square of the deviation. Of course, you can always have for any objective function a weight associated with that. And ultimately, you need to sum up for the number of monitoring nodes. You need to really minimize this function. So using the Gauss-Newton sensitivity analysis techniques. So one can do, like we talked about earlier, you can really take the gradients and then equate. You have to really take the gradient of the objective function. The first gradient, you have to set it to 0. And the second gradient, you will check it up, what type of function it's going to behave. Following those things, the type of equations, what you see there, you will get it. But what you ultimately are getting is the change in concentration with respect to different wall parameters, KW, KWSL and KWSM. You are differentiated, and you are trying to actually calculate the correction in delta KWSM. If you were to formulate in Newton-Raphson method, you end up with this equation. Ultimately, you are looking at the correction in the KW value. So sensitivity, the left side, what you are seeing is the sensitivity matrix actually, and multiplied by the delta KW. So the calibration error statistics, of course, you need to have parameter uncertainty being used, which one can use it using a posterior parameter covariance matrix. And also, you can have the parameter confidence limits also can be calculated. It's not that you estimate a parameter, you should say with what confidence limits the parameter actually vary, which are calculated lies in which what ranges the confidence limits also becomes very, very important. And of course, one can have any of the choice of weights-based measured values. It is not that all the measurements should have the same weight. It is up to you to give different types of weights for the different measurements. For the simple reason, any of the experiments, any of the behavior will be non-linear. Initially, it may have a strong, very rapid changes. Later, it may stabilize. Some of them initially it may be very slow, but later it may change very rapidly. So depending on the behavior of the objective function, behavior of the change in the how the problem behaves, the observations, you can bring in some sort of a weights to give the appropriate weight for such a function. And of course, the another thing also I should mention here, it is not that mathematically we'll always use the Gauss-Newton or something like that. It's also possible you can use the genetic algorithm techniques also is possible. You can have an initial set of values, decision variables. You can go to water quality simulation model. And of course, you can calculate the nodal chlorine concentration. You can evaluate the fitness of the function. And of course, based on the, you can select the best generation decision variables. And of course, the GA operators you can operate based on the fitness, niche, reproduction, crossover, mutation, creep mutation, elitism. Then go back to the set and you can keep on repeating it. So it's also possible more and more you can bring in the soft computing tools like GA, and later you are going to see ANN, which you can club it with your traditional inverse models. And of course, this is some of the examples. It just I want to take you through very fast here. Some sort of a network we have done here. What you should understand here is, so the true values are given in the second column here. And we have tried out the several examples here, weight 1, weight 2, weight 3, weight 4, data set 1, data set 2. So 0.75, 0.5, 1.0, they are the true values. With respect to that, how we'll be able to estimate the values are all shown here, and also the percentage of variation. So because the type of problem what is posed here is because we know the true value, we are able to compare and say which method is better. Please also understand in a real world problem, you may not know the true value, in fact. So you have to only find out by trial and error and try to see how it will get converged. So these are all something like an academic exercise where you try out and try to see my data set 3 with this type of thing. Wherever we have the less average error, percentage error, for example, 5.13 is there in the weight 2, that type of the, or the 4.18 in the data set 2, that could be the one can take in such cases here. And also we compared several such techniques. In fact, the GNSAT, GAT results, just to understand which is better using the, see, GNSAT is Gauss-Newton sensitivity analysis technique. GAT is genetic algorithm technique. We are trying to compare which can be used. So one can see that it's possible the traditional Gauss-Newton sensitivity analysis technique, you can still generate the results using genetic algorithms. That's what this is talking about it here, this example. And of course, one can always see that how the error is propagating and how it is going to, after the number of iterations, the error has to come down. You're going to see at different data sets and different points here. And of course, when you come to the reactions, in fact, nobody has told us what sort of reactions they are. So one can even take any network and start looking at see the number of combinations there in terms of the reaction rates, bulk and wall, first order, zero order. I'm not going to read all that. So you have so many combinations. Obviously, you do not know which is the one which is best. So ultimately, we need to really take some of these things in the sense, overall, how it's going to behave, what sort of a reaction to the thing is possible. All these things have to be tested out. And of course, here we have tried out several things and which is the type of the reactions. And we are trying to say the data set 1, data set 2, data set 3, and the Bangalore network, we conclude that this type of approach may be better for this type of network. That's what we're trying to conclude in this type of studies, the reaction kinetics. It's only indicating to you that when you take a real world problem, the reaction kinetics itself is a challenging task. Identifying the parameters, identifying the reaction rate itself becomes a challenging task. That's how you should interpret here. And moving on to dynamic state, that means where the time is coming into picture, the objective function is similar, what you are seeing here. And ultimately, the same type of things, GNSAT and GSAT, we are going to do. The equations are similar. Only the thing is, this becomes a double summation. As we can see here, the time also comes into picture. That's what is the summation. And you are going to estimate the parameters based on the time criteria itself here. And of course, the calibration error statistics, they're all similar. I'm not going to read that. One only thing you should understand here is whenever you estimate the parameters, all this calibration, these statistics become very, very important. Then only these things are given a lot of weightage, and including the covariance matrix, the posterior matrix you need to calculate. So one of the things we have applied on the Bushy planes, I think this is the network for the parameters. So where GNSAT, GA, and GAT results, they are all compared. And because we started with a true value estimated value, you can see here in the last table 3.22, you have K0, KW1, then you have F1, F2, different things are there, the objective function. So how much is the estimated value? How much is the starting value? You can see the objective function. So ultimately, you're trying to estimate these values and see how best you can compare. So you can see GNSAT, you have K0 2.51, it's the overall reaction rate. And whereas in GAT, it's 2.5133. So these things are being compared and see that such similar results are being given. And of course, GA parameters are also shown that how much variation you should do in the genetic algorithm to get the required results. That's what these things are showing about here. And of course, the calibration of the error statistics is also shown here in terms of correlation between the means, RMS error. Obviously, it has to keep on reducing. That's what these things are shown here, both for the GNSAT and the other things. And also, one should also understand that one can zone the number of parameters. See, if you mechanically take the number of parameters, as many pipelines are there, as many nodes are there, it becomes very, very large, depending on when the pipes are put, when the necessary, how the hydraulic control is there, one can make this zonation, and correspondingly parameters can be calculated or identified. That way, you can bring down the size of the parameters. Ultimately, you have the estimated parameters here for the different groups, and of course, the number of observations and observed mean and all these things are all given here, computed, things like that. I'm not going to read those things. What I'm trying to say is, once you have the parameters here, you need to identify, check the values, how it's going to behave, how the reaction rates are performing. That's what we are going to compare it here. So, and of course, these convergence characteristics are given here, GNSAT, and chlorine concentration for global and zoned cases are also compared here. Of course, the one more reaction rate is there, model application reaction rate. So this is the type of plant. So you are going to look at this on the similar one. You are going to compare it and understand how the reaction rate changes. As you can see here, it's a much bigger network. How measurement. So what we are asking the question here is, what is the wall reaction rate? And the measurement nodes are given at these nodes. If you were to give, how much should have been the reaction rate is the question which has been asked. First order chlorine reaction rates are used. We are going to assume that, and you are going to find out what will be the wall reaction rate. This is what these tables are all showing here, and in terms of the reaction rates. And of course, when you zone it, you get different types of parameters. That's what being set here in the convergence. So it's also possible to have what's called source strength identification. It requires to maintain microbial quality of water, and also appropriate chlorine residuals should be maintained to achieve balance. So source strength chlorine concentration, mass injection rate, and the supply rate should be known. And also how much should have been the source strength to get the target. That's the one which we are looking at. And we need to estimate the appropriate values of the source strength to maintain a specified value or a value of between the specified ranges of chlorine residuals at a given monitoring nodes. And of course, the types of water quality sources are concentration at source, mass booster source, flow pace booster source, different set point source, different like that. The problem is posed as unconstrained event determinant, and hence the model formulation of steady state parameter problem is applicable. The only difference being the observed values are the specified chlorine concentration, and the unknown parameters are the source strength. So to reach this target, what should have been my strength is the type of questions which we are asking. In fact, it's a very, very practical problem, because you need to maintain residual chlorine at the far end. To have that residual chlorine at all those places, what should have been the source strength is the question which we are asking of ourselves here. So this is what we call old Bangalore network. So we are trying to estimate, in fact, in this, the source strength is given here already, which the following the similar thing has been calculated. So the problem is given here in terms of what you can see, it's unconstrained optimization. So once you have formulated, the problems are similar, but the outputs can be, the approach can be similar, but the outputs can be different, and the type of problem what you actually address could be different. So when actually converting the constraint optimization to an unconstrained optimization. That's what we are trying to show it here in terms of. Of course, as a small part of some Bangalore, we call it Kalaspalya network. We solved it here. So that source we are trying to find out. Given a 2, what should have been the source strength is the question which we are asking, which we solved there. And of course, here also some sort of a lake source and river source are being addressed. Zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4. The first order reaction kinetics are given. We are asking the question, what should have been the chlorine concentration at the lake, at the river, given at all these points, we need this type of chlorine concentration. That's the type of questions which have been asked in terms of the source strength. Of course, we have run using those models. It has already been done here. I'm only getting to the similar thing has been done using the genetic algorithm technique also. And as I showed you, we compare the results and we're able to get similar results here. And also we applied on the for linear kinetics, first order reaction rate is given here, example network, in terms of finding out what should be the source strength here in similar examples here. I'll move faster so that I have other things also to talk about here. And I think I'll skip this example. It's a similar thing of the finding out the source strength here. So basically coming to this, the water quality parameter estimation in a steady state weight based on the mean measurements is found to perform better. The parameter estimation procedures for steady state and dynamic state developed are applicable for any type of reaction kinetics, useful to identify the appropriate reaction kinetics for the system, able to handle group or zoned estimates of the parameters, quantity as well as the quality data is important. And of course, the first order wall reaction parameter is found to be varying inversely with the diameter of the pipe. Both solution techniques, GNSAT and GSAT, are found to compute the parameters very well. That's what we are talking about it. And similar thing we did for source strength identification also. I'm not going to read that. Anyway, these slides will be available to you, I suppose. And the GA approach is well suited for the source strength identification. What I'm trying to convey is, though I really like the in terms of the mathematical thing, ultimately even the soft computing tools can do a lot of work, especially when used in combination with the mathematical one. The things can be much better. So another thing I should mention here, in fact, though a lot of parameters are being done, it's also possible that you can use the soft computing tools to achieve the same thing what you're doing through the numerical techniques. So, for example, if you have a numerical technique for a chemical reaction, bacteriological reaction, which I have not talked about here, which has got about 28 parameter sets, the same thing can be used to train an ANN model. And of course, you can use all these techniques for the finding out the parameters. You can train them, and ultimately you can get how the system, you can train it and also estimate the parameters much better. So we are trying to look at the water quality indicators, chlorine substrate biomass. I'm going to talk about it here. I think just now I mentioned. So you have the single output, 2 output, 3 output architectures using Liebenberg-Marquardt algorithm, 3 output architectures. Using all these things, using our early numerical techniques, we try to find out whether we can train it using ANN, then invert it and find the parameters, so that the number of parameters what you do, actually you find out is much better. So we use the resilient backpropagation, Liebenberg-Marquardt algorithm, general regression, all these things were used, and ultimately use the basic structure of feed-forward neural networks for the training, and then we inverted it to get the parameters out. But of course, backpropagation is also there. I'm not going to get into all these details, though. I'm going to just show you in terms of how the mathematically what you do, the rigorous one can also be used, can also be simulated using the ANN approaches. That's what this is all about here. Of course, we have the selection of input data, principal component analysis, performance of model values, error analysis, all that can be done. Ultimately, selection of input data models. So you have source chlorine, substrate, biomass, water age, inflows, consumption. What we talked there, we can do it using some of these soft computing technique. And also the type of models which are used are 1 output, 2 output, 3 output. So one of the things we talked about is, though there may be multiple inputs, so multiple outputs also we were able to solve using these techniques. So I think it's only indicating that especially the bacteriological thing, what we talked about it here, you need a very large number of parameters to simulate such a thing. And the same thing you can do using ANN technique if you were to train it. And if you were to have a good measurement techniques in the field, using that measurement techniques, using such techniques, you can find out the parameters or you can train the model. That's what this ANN is trying to show you here. And I think moving on to my probably the last section, I suppose, the inverse modeling using Ensemble-Kalman filter. See, somewhere we did mention that the a priori information may be available to you in terms of measurements as you are moving. If these measurements are available, can you not constrain it? In all these initial earlier inverse problem, when you say, hello, hello, sir, can I talk, Sandeep? Okay, Sandeep, can I talk? Yeah. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can.
Somewhere in between. Okay. So in all the earlier things, after the event is over, so you have both in terms of the space and time, you are actually getting the data, you are putting it in objective function, then you are literally using the objective function, square of the deviations, all that, and are using the gradient techniques, whatever we are talking about, you are inverting and trying to find out the parameters. Suppose one were to actually some measurements are given, some observations are given, you want to constrain it as you are moving. And also suppose you were to actually find out the system state as well as the parameters dynamically as you are moving in time. That is where I think Kalman filter will come into picture. Let us look at how it can be done using the techniques what we are talking about here. So in the Ensemble-Kalman filter, it's a widely used data simulation methodology for state estimation in dynamical systems and also parameter estimation for inverse problems. So you have the forward model, predicted state ensembles, calculated predicted measurement ensembles, calculated measurement errors, calculated Kalman gain, updated predicted states. So when you initially you have to generate an ensemble of model input values, and of course the field measurement values or generate field measurements. If ensembles are given, you can literally constrain it, and of course you can force it on the function and try to see how the system is going to perform. Of course, Ensemble-Kalman filter, which is a little recent, I will say, in terms of the water thing, though it has been used very heavily elsewhere in other areas, especially electrical and other places, including in groundwater. So you have the state prediction here, 1, measurement prediction is number 2, then ensemble field measurements which are given 3, and updating the matrix state using 4. And ultimately, it also depends on the Kalman gain. Of course, the reference also is given here in terms of Mordakani et al. 2005. So we have these 4 steps which are very, very important: state prediction, measurement prediction, ensemble field measurements. So you need to bring in the field measurements and ensemble it and updating the state matrix. And of course, it depends on the Kalman gain what you do here. And getting deep, doing a deep dive into that, there are different types of Ensemble-Kalman filter: non-iterative ensemble, iterative, or we call it dual ensemble, non-iterative restart Ensemble-Kalman filter, iterative restart. So obviously a lot of work has been done here, but ultimately trying to convey that the Ensemble-Kalman filter in whichever form you are going to use, though each one of them have got their own advantage and limitation, but ultimately the overall result what you get using Kalman filter will be much better than the other techniques what we talked about it. So trying to look at the water quality source strength and water quality parameter estimation, KB, KW, bulk and wall, and also water quality state estimation, residual chlorine concentration at the nodes. So obviously there are, for example, non-iterative restart Kalman filter, it's augmented with the state matrix, and one has to predict the parameter ensembles are created and state ensemble predicted using the predicted parameters need to be done, and measurement ensemble prediction also need to be done when you try to look at. So this is the basic step, updated step what you are seeing here. The states and parameters are updated simultaneously. This is the most important thing. In between iterative, non-iterative, that are some of the things, the small changes. In iterative, you may go back. In a non-iterative thing, you may do it later. In iterative, you update it together. That's what the changes are. But most important thing, both the state and the parameters actually you are estimating as you are moving in time. That's the most important thing in all these things you are the one has to keep in mind. And parameters are predicted, parameters are updated using measurements. Updated parameters are used to collect the used to predict the system state, and measurements are used to update the system states. These things are all the ones which you keep in mind when you try to look at. So you have the iterative restart Kalman filter. I'm not going to read this mathematics. Obviously, what you should understand here is as the state ensemble predicted using the correct, using predicted parameters, parameter update has to be done. There is a parameter update step. A Kalman gain for the parameter update also has to be done, and you have to move with time as you move along here. And there is a difference. I'm not going to read it again here. Iterative restart. There's a difference between these two small two difference will be there. Let us look at some sort of an examples on which we have applied the case studies of performance indicators. Source strength identification for a non-dynamic water system, a loop experiment, simple loop experiment which was done in the lab, source strength identification for a dynamic water system, Bushy plains and Bangalore inflow network. And these performance indicators are used, measured using the average absolute error AAE and an average ensemble standard deviation error AEST, which are the statistics which are used for its measurement. And water quality source strength data estimating using ensemble Kalman assimilation data. This is a small experiment where Jambal and myself we were able to do, and then that experiment was used by Anjana in comparing this model. So trying to find out the source strength. So in the loop experiments, what can be done? So it has got some sort of in the lab, some 7 LPM and sodium hypochlorite is used as a disinfectant, and then the experiment is started only after 2 hours. Bottle test is done. So ultimately, you are going to get an initial dosage of given a 4 milligram per liter and 6 milligram per liter. And it's also, we are assuming that overall it's the first order reaction model, and trying to see how this model is going to behave is the question which we are asking ourselves. So in this source strength estimation under non-dynamic system conditions, ENKF was used for data simulation. C0 is considered as uncertain, and initial estimate ensembles of C0 for sampled ones are given here. We need the measurements at all those points. And then ultimately we were trying to see here, this is the one. You have the number of ensembles, what you can see here, N, 10, 50, 100. Measurements are there, water quality model is there. We are trying to see what sort of K0 and C0, what sort of ensemble will work. That's the one which we are trying to see here in terms of the data, the experimental data which was measured. Therefore, we are trying it for 2 initial dosages about the 4 milligram per liter and 6 milligram per liter here. And of course, the lot of variations are there, which I'm not going to get into that. Again, similar thing was done, and 6 milligram per liter is supposed to be the one which is showing here in terms of the variations, and estimated value of C0 is 4.5 milligram per liter, as you can see here in terms of the 6. But whereas in other cases, for the estimated value, we started with a 4 milligram per liter, we estimated about only 3 milligram per liter. That's what it was about. And basically what we concluded here was which is the type of ensemble Kalman filter we can use it for source chloride concentration under non-dynamic conditions. As the number of ensembles increases, the estimation accuracy increases. After a particular value of n, the reduction in the estimation error is negligible, and as n value increases, the AST value also increases. And having done that, we went into Bushy plains here to try out our model. And the simulation parameters are all given here in terms of 60 minutes hydraulic time step. One should really understand that our hydraulic time step will be very large, water quality time step will be very relatively small. And the duration, the total duration of the experiment is about 16 hours. And most important, the frequency at which you pick up the data. Once in every 15 minutes, we have picked it up. And the number of node measurements is taken as n. KB value is minus 0.55 per day, where KW value is minus 0.45 to minus 0.15 meters per day. This is what we are trying to do. And ultimately, we ran different types of models and trying to see how the value is going to be in terms of the convergence, both in terms of NIR, ENKF, and both the type of the things. With the different models are run at different places, the chlorine concentration estimate at different nodes. For case 2, using all these things are given here. So trying to estimate so one more thing what is done here is very, very important, because we are using the Kalman filter. We also use the EPANET results, where you can actually give the values and predict it. We are able to compare and then convince ourselves what we are trying to do using the Kalman filter technique is much better. That's what we are trying to conclude here. And what should have been the source strength also is identified. And we applied this technique on a Bangalore network. As you can see here is these whole pipelines of Bangalore inflow system. From left to right, you have Kaveri stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, phase 1. We also have stage 4, phase 2, which will bring in about right now 1500 MLD, but this is done for about 910 MLD. The experiment, the numerical experiments are conducted, and the water will come and reach into about 65 reservoirs in the city. And then, of course, from there it gets into different areas. So as you can see here, the 1974, 83, 93, 2002, every 10 years we are going to get water. Big projects are brought in, but still, of course, the Bangalore is still having a lot of shortage of water to that extent. I should also mention here, if we have about 1,500 MLD of water being supplied, we have roughly about 500 MLD or even more of groundwater being pumped in Bangalore. So we also have the demand pattern. It's a dynamical system. Assuming the demand pattern, we are trying to look at how the hydraulic state changes and also quality changes. And of course, as you can see here, the observed values of KW1, KW2, KW3, KW4 also given here, which we have taken from Munmurali's earlier work. And we tried to see whether we can fit our model using Kalman filter and then trying to find out whether it's possible to get the values here. So we ran for different ensembles. We ran ultimately and trying to see whether these values will fit in and whether we even can compare these type of accurate values, whatever we are trying to get it. So the observed values are also given here. What you can see very interesting, observed value is about 0.75, computed mean is 0.7534. So it's a very good comparison we try to look at. So NIR ENKF was able to estimate the chlorine concentration. AE values of nodes upstream and downstream of valves and pumps are also generally higher. And it's due to the hydraulic modeling constraints associated with the forward simulation model. NEPA-net valves and pumps are considered as appurtenances without lens. So roughly we are able to generate whatever we are able to do it earlier using the Kalman filter. And one should understand, as I keep on telling, the Kalman filter techniques will give you the state and the estimation, the state of the system as well as the parameter as you move in time. And also you can constrain it by the actual measurements if you were to have. So you also have the reaction parameter estimation for water quality state estimation using the same NKF. So loop experiment is there. I'm going to move faster. And then the case studies are also done here in terms of the chlorine concentrations and then things like that which we are able to measure. And some of them, of course, as you can see here, it may not be converging so well. So you also understand why all the time it may not be working. One has to, for example, at some tanks and all, it's behaving well. And some of these cases at some nodes, you have certain deviations. At some places, it's behaving well. One should also understand what's happening to the hydraulics and other things one should keep in mind. And of course, ultimately, the observed value and the computed mean value are given here. So you have KW1 minus 1, computed is minus 0.75, KW is minus 0.75, computed is minus 0.77, and KW3 is minus 0.5, and computed is minus 0.5054, and KW4 is minus 0.25, but it's far away. You have minus 0.45. Of course, the similar things are also talking here. The disparity in KW values across the system, we found out frequent flow reversal occurs also in many pipes. In a network, it's possible. Then that way the type of reactions are also can change. KW values for WS is dependent on the diameter and the pipe and the flow. The pipes with larger diameter have lesser K value, KW value. Frequent flow reversal also possible. So ultimately, we try to look at the data simulation methods based on ENKF for a form of inverse problem. In this study, ENKF and its variants are used for estimating the water quality source strength, water quality parameters, and states. The study was applied on a non-dynamic and dynamic water network. So, of course, you can see the comparison between the different types of things what is being done here. So, these are all the references here. And most important thing, I did not start earlier. So, as I mentioned, all the works are done by my students. Only I'm picking up some of them here, the names, and then I'm acknowledging them. In fact, Priyanka, this one of the part of the work of coastal modeling was done by Priyanka as a part of a PhD work. This is a small work which we talked about it. It has appeared in Journal of Hydrology. And Dr. Priyanka, I also would like to acknowledge Dr. Anjana GR. So her real-time water quality in Kalman using Kalman filter, which has appeared in ASC, WRPM, and I'm acknowledging her. Again, it's a part of her work. And I think I'm sure Priyanka is there. I'm sure Anjana may be there hearing this. And also Dr. Munwarli, I think he told me he'll be online. I think he should be, I presume he's in the seminar. So he's a professor in Sangli Walchand Engineering College. I should really acknowledge him. In fact, he was the one who literally opened out the water quality studies in India. I should almost say that in pipe network. So I'm acknowledging him. Two of his papers are referred here. Both are top papers, water research as well as the ASE, WRPM papers. And it is Dr. Celia, I should also acknowledge her, who showed that what Munwarli did with 28 parameters set using the bacteriological modeling, she could show using the ANN approach. One can train it, and if you were to give some measurements, you can still use soft computing tools and then still actually come out with the models. That's what she could show. It has appeared in Water Science and Technology. And thank you very much. I think, as mentioned, I think it's exactly 4:10, about an hour, 5 minutes. First of all, sorry if I was very fast. I wanted to cover a lot of things, and this whole lecture is recorded. Any of you can read. Now, thanking all my students, and also especially thanking all listeners across, and also thanking the professors and faculty at BLDA College. So I just open it out, and I will ask Sandeep to control from here. I'll be available. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. If there are any questions from the participants, you can either ask your questions directly, keep your mics on, introduce yourself and ask the question, or else you can also write the question in the chat section. I'll read out the question to the sir. So there is a question, sir, which was asked between your lecture. I would like to ask that question, sir.
Please, please. Who it is also you can say. Where and
Actually, his name is not there, sir. He has logged in. Oh, I'll just ask you the questions. Please explain conversion of constraint problem to unconstrained problem.
Oh, that's constraint problem to unconstrained problem. Okay. See, the thing is, you can make the objective function itself in terms of, you can add the whatever the constraints you want in the objective function itself in a quadratic function. You can add that. Otherwise, you can have specifically have the objective function and bring the limits as a constraint itself separately. It can be done. It's a very classical thing. One can refer to any of the papers. It will be very difficult to explain here. It's possible. So the whole thing can be written as an objective function itself is one. Or you can have the objective function, also bring this constraint separately, and then literally impose it as you move along in the solution. Yes, Sandeep.
Hello.
Oh, yes, please. Yes, please.
Sir, this is Sita from IIT Hyderabad. This is about coastal aquifer part you explained. You said there are 75, if I am correct, 75 zones. So 75 into 3 number of parameters. So that 75 arrived? Is it again based on trying different number of zones and finding that 75 is the optimum number for delineation?
Yeah, thank you. No, you're perfectly correct. It depends on the number of layers, number of zonations. That itself actually is an inverse problem. So some of them are all based on the geophysics which has been used. Okay, based on the geophysics, this layering and zonation is already been mapped, and using which these things would have created. And based on that, these 75 numbers are come out with. That itself is, as you rightly said, it can strictly be any number for that matter.
Hello, so Priyanka here.
Hi, Priyanka.
Sita, I'll answer your question. As there are 5 layers and each layer has 15 parameters, so it is 75. I mean, I think I'm clear. Anything else?
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, will there be some spatial variation or is it just a vertical stratification?
No, it is pilot point. In each layer, there are 15 pilot points. At 15 pilot points, I'm estimating the.
Yeah. Thank you, Priyanka. So, Sita, basically all that information is coming from geophysics. Okay. And the geophysics has told us so many layers, so many things and all, which literally you are constraining it on the problem and trying to look at. What I was trying to say is, for example, that same 5 layers can as well be 7 layers, or it could be 3 layers. And the pilot points, what she talked about, it could be 15. Suppose I can make it 25 pilot point. Okay. So these are all the questions which arises. Of course, there is no point in making it infinite number of points and keep on spreading it, because you cannot solve such a problem. At the same time, which will never happen, imagine the whole system. I'm only trying to estimate using one pilot point, 2 layers, and expect things to behave. That's where that conceptual model, what was shown initially, when the layers were all proper estimate, representation was not given, you won't be able to get a good match with the observations. So that's the whole thing about. In fact, in groundwater, or for that matter, in any subsurface, actual representation of the subsurface itself is a challenging task. As you are aware, then one more is the scale itself at what you look at. Okay. Okay. Sandeep, anybody else?
Sir, can I ask you, sir?
Please. Yeah.
Hello, sir.
One second. There is a question that has been asked in the chat section. Once I read that question, you can ask the question later. Okay. So there is a question from Vaibhav. Is it possible to establish the relationship between remote sensing based vegetation index and on-field crop area zone data?
Oh, yeah, sure. Definitely. A lot of my own colleagues are working on. I'm not directly working on that. So the leaf area index and then other things, the remote sensing, and then what is happening on the land. A lot of work is going on. And the other way around is also good, where assuming some of these signals inverting, what should have been the parameters also being estimated. I think definitely you should refer to some of the works which are already going on in IISc and elsewhere also in India. Plenty of work is going on. I'm not covering that here. Yeah.
Hello, sir. Hi, sir. It's Veena here.
Oh, hi, Veena. Hi.
Sir, very nice and informative presentation, sir, where you covered a lot of inverse models and.
Thank you to all our students. I should also mention
Yes,
a lot of other students are there. A lot of their work
yes.
I did not want to bring in
Yeah, nice.
upscaling and all. You
Yes,
worked
sir.
a lot,
Yeah, nice to hear from you, sir, after a long time, though it's online. I just have a query again in the groundwater modeling, Priyanka's work. She has some 75 zones. In that zone, does she have in each zone all the parameters are homogeneous, or will she bring in some heterogeneity within the zones?
Within the zones, no. I think it's homogeneous. Within the zone, no.
Homogeneous. Okay, sir.
Homogeneous there.
Actually, I
whole
think,
idea, whole idea there was, maybe I think we'll have a separate discussion among ourselves. Let us not take another time. The whole
Yes,
idea
sir.
there is, in fact, very detailed as much as possible. Geophysical studies done in a very, very small area in near Surathkal.
Yes, sir. I have read that paper. Yes, sir.
So
yes.
we want to see, using those as the data, can we model slightly a bigger coastal aquifer, okay, from
Yes,
to something else, and then ultimately can we model the whole of coastal Karnataka, that 300 kilometer length by 40 kilometer. That's the ultimately. You are right. Upscaling will come into picture first, but how much of each of these things represent a certain area or a volume? That's exactly what Sita is also asking in some other context.
Yes, sir.
That's the most challenging part. Yeah.
In some cases, I somehow feel inverse modeling, we zero in on some particular parameters, especially hydraulic conductivity and all. So when it comes to scaling problems, does it really works is it really applicable? I wonder, because I started working, I also was working on inverse modeling for some time, but yes, sir. But now I am thinking like we should bring in scale.
No, I entirely agree. But even to do the upscaling, First of all, at whatever scale, the inverse modeling becomes important where you re-invert it and get a confidence that it just represents that area, that volume, that depth, that length. Okay, whatever it
Yes,
is.
sir. Yes, sir.
Then having done that, that's exactly what we are talking about in the geophysics. At that 8 square kilometers, what the geophysics represents. In fact, here we are not talking about it, where the electrical resistivity versus the hydraulic conductivity relationships are coming up.
Yes, sir.
We have understood that and it represents that. Later, like somebody is asking, can we use the geophysics instead of all this hydraulic conductivity in a bigger
Yes, sir.
area? That's the type
Yes, sir.
of things which you are asking.
That's also much in use nowadays.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what we
Yeah.
are talking.
Thank you, sir. We'll discuss
Thank you.
in
Nice
detail
talking to
again.
each one of you separately.
Yeah, sure, sir. Sure. Thank you very much.
Sandeep, sorry, my own students take over. Sorry, please. Ask others.
So is there anyone else who wants to ask the question? There are no questions in the chat section, sir, right now. If there is anyone who asks,
Yeah, and I'm sorry I had to move fast because I have to cover a lot of things. At the same time, a lot of things are left out. As you can see, Veena is talking, so many other students, they're all there. And yeah, feel free. I think I'm there for some more time, no issue. Anything they can ask. See, whole idea, Sandeep, and all to others who are listening, especially young researchers, okay, and young faculty. See, first of all, don't get intimidated by so many things which are going on. Like when you open a top journal, almost you will see that, everything is done or we can't even follow. I think get into the groove, and locally we have very, very challenging problems. And of course, the tools you should use appropriate, either mathematical or experimental or whatever we want to use it, then ultimately pose the problem. And I think, see, a lot of things can be done sitting wherever you are sitting and then using the appropriate tool. And of course, most important thing, collaborating with the right people. Don't hesitate. It could be in IIT Bombay, it could be in IIT Delhi or IISc, wherever it is, doesn't matter. Or NIT K Suratka. We should collaborate, learn from each other.
actually, I'm the student of water resource engineering itself from NIT Surat.
Oh, good. See, yeah,
So-
yeah, nice. Maybe we would have seen each other. I used to visit very frequently. Okay, any other questions, Sandeep? Ask others. If not, Professor Huggi, is Munvalli there? Munvalli, he's just sent a message. Munvalli, you want to say something? He's very. No, he hardly talks. I think he only works.
So there is one question which has been asked again from Abhishek Prabhakar.
Okay, please.
In all those quality parameters, which one is the most harmful?
There is nothing like harmful per se. Most, the important thing to analyze. So I think the wall parameter still we have not understood. So the bulk can be estimated somehow. But even to make things much more simpler, there is what's called a overall parameter. Even if we estimate that, it's okay. Something we understand what's going to happen. We call it K naught. We estimate that. That itself is still a challenging task. Munvalli, you want to say something?
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yes, sir.
Please.
Nice to hear you again, sir, after 20 years. I thought I am doing my work by looking at the work presented by you.
You
You elaborated a lot on water quality. That should be some kind of encouragement for the researchers to take up these topics ahead. After my work, I am seeing a lot of work on Kalman and other things.
a lot of people are now got into water networks and so many things, and things are happening. And more important, people should take it up. That's what I'm trying to say. Especially youngsters looking for PhD problems and so many things. Okay, Sandeep, I think there's no. Munvalli, you want to say something? Go ahead, please.
The field work is very much essential, sir. You don't have
Your
the
voice is not audible, sir. Guru, sir.
Munvalli, talk
Munvalli,
close
sir.
to the laptop, Munvalli.
Hello,
Laptop or
hello, Sandeep, am I audible?
yeah.
Now
Now, yes.
your volume is very low, sir. So that's why we could not be able to listen.
No, you talk talk.
Okay. So now
Please
the
come
present
closer to the mics.
So
Huh.
present day's requirement is to get the field data as much as possible, especially on the water quality, because the people of municipal authorities have only the chlorine data with them. But we need to get other data as well, so that the modeling can be supported by the real life data, and that will help us to properly simulate and analyze the water quality in the network. Okay, thank you, sir.
Murali, you're perfectly correct. See, chlorine is still the thing, like multi-component reaction transport in terms of, THM, TTHM, so many things are going on. And biofilm growth, decay, a lot of things are happening. And I think one need to really look at many of such things, especially youngsters. They can do the wonderful job. So Sandeep, your own colleagues, any of your professors, of course, Professor Huggi in the end, if he's there. So any of them.
So there is a question which has been asked, but it is basically on remote sensing. But I'll ask you these questions.
No problem. Ask. No problem.
There is pollution in rivers. Can we use remote sensing techniques to monitor real-time pollution?
Oh, sure. Yeah, people are doing it. Yes, possible. I don't directly work in that. I don't directly work in that area, but people are working. I do know it's possible. Anjana, are you there? Anjana? Anjana? No. Okay. Sandeep, ask your own colleagues, anybody else, or then Professor Huggi. Then I will say hi to him, and then we'll close. Just ask your colleagues any.
Yes, I'll.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. Mohan Kumar, sir.
Namaste, sir. Namaste.
Sir, it is a very good lecture on the inverse modeling. Hello.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
A very informative lecture, sir. Hello.
It is audible, sir. It is audible, sir. You can go ahead.
ನಾನು ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಿದೆ ಸರ್. ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ.
Accepting our invitation and giving a lecture on this webinar series 2. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Some of you always used to talk, and it's nice. It happened this way. It's nice anyway. So,
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sandeep, before even you hung up, thank you very much. Without any technical hitch, it happened. I was always worried whether slide will come or won't come or something else happen. Always worried about it. And you and Priyank on the other side. Thank you. So I'll leave it to you. You can formally close it whichever way you want.
Yes, yes. So there are no questions being asked, sir. So thank you very much for accepting our invitation and giving this wonderful presentation, sir. I'm thanking you from bottom of my heart. So we will end this session. Tomorrow we have another 2 sessions. The information of that will be sent in your WhatsApp group also. So I'll thank you, sir, Mohan Rao, sir, again from all the participants and from our college department and from myself. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Professor Huggi, and all the colleagues.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, all the students, researchers, and thank you, my own students. Thank you very much. Thank you.